Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of our attendees joining us today for this latest Data Science Central webinar. This is Bill Voorhees, your host. I'm the editorial director with Data Science Central and also chief data scientist for Data Magnum. So I'd like to start off our event today by thanking Alteryx for sponsoring today's event. Alteryx is a longtime supporter of the Data Science Central community, and we're honored to have them sponsoring our event today. I'd also like to take this opportunity to mention and show our appreciation for some of our other recent sponsors, including Tableau, Sisense, Qlik, IBM, DataRobot, and TIBCO, to name just a few. Now, past webinars are available on demand at datasciencecentral.com. If you haven't had the opportunity to view them, I encourage you to take a look. They provide some very useful insight into a wide variety of topics of interest to our data science community. Now, today's webinar is entitled The Art of Self-Service Data Analytics, to be presented by Alteryx. But before we begin, I'd like to briefly review the format of today's webinar. Today's event will be an hour long. We have 3 presenters that I'll introduce in just a minute. There'll be 10 or 15 minutes of Q&A following the presentation. And this event is being recorded and will be available on datasciencecentral.com later this afternoon following today's live event. Now, I'd also like to encourage our attendees to provide questions throughout the presentation, as we'll be reviewing and presenting them on your behalf during the Q&A portion of today's event. Well, I'm very pleased to introduce today's speakers, Andy Simnick and Matthew Norris with the Art Institute of Chicago, and Raman Kaler with Alteryx. Now, Andy is Senior Vice President for Finance, Strategy, and Operations for the Art Institute of Chicago. He's implemented quantitative and evidence-based metrics for ongoing evaluation of organizational health, project execution, and process improvement. Andy holds a BS in Electrical and Electronics Engineering from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and a PhD in Biomedical Engineering from Duke. Now, Matthew is an executive director of analytics at the Art Institute of Chicago, where he focuses on operational revenue gathering systems. He has a BA in mathematical computer science and an MBA from the University of Illinois at Chicago. Now, Raman is an alliance and product manager at Alteryx, where she focuses on defining strategy and executing programs for joint marketing efforts with key strategic partners. And she currently focuses on partner marketing efforts with Tableau, Amazon Web Services, Salesforce, and others. So, thanks for being with us today, Andy, Matthew, Raman. We're looking forward to your presentation. Now, regardless of the amount of resources, headcount, time, budget, whatever your organization or department has or doesn't have, data-driven insights are critical for growing the business. But uncovering aha moments is no easy feat. Now, most organizations also combine a number of business models within one operation and have numerous objectives to consider in everyday decision-making. Museums are no different. What's more, museums face significant headwinds such as limited headcount, increasing costs, and an uncertain economic environment. So in today's Data Science Central webinar, we'll learn from the Art Institute of Chicago how they have leveraged self-service analytics to grow attendance and operating revenue through more informed decision-making, strengthen operations to share more of its collection online, and understand its audiences with the aid of machine learning. So through specific examples of museums' successes, failures, and efforts in between, you'll gain insight into how to introduce or scale analytics in a resource-limited environment. Andy, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. You can begin as soon as you're ready to go.
All right, well, thank you, Bill. I appreciate the introduction, and thanks to everyone for taking the time to hear a bit about our story here at the Art Institute of Chicago. And as Bill said, we are like any other mid-sized organization. Right? We have lots of challenges, lots of opportunity, and like many organizations, currently applying data and analytics in new ways to learn more about our business, to operate more efficiently, and ultimately just know that we're doing the right thing for the future of our organization. So just starting out, so what is the Art Institute? Normally I would ask, how many of you have been to the Art Institute? Feel free to put yes or no in the chat box. But just for those of you that aren't familiar with us, we're an art museum. So we were founded in 1879. We still have the same mission today. So I think we fall into that category squarely of a venerable institution. And we've always been known for collecting the art of today. At a time, Impressionist art was contemporary art. At a time, Picasso was a contemporary artist. And going forward, one of our main strategies and keys to our success is to continue to collect the art of today. That will be the icons of tomorrow. We have a reputation for quality and scholarship. We do things the right way at the Art Institute. And we also are connected with the School of the Art Institute, which is a world-renowned arts-based college. Just some basic stats. We typically see about 1.5 to 1.7 million visits per year. And this oscillates based on a number of factors, which we'll talk about later in the presentation. We do about 30 exhibitions per year, ranging from large, dedicated installations with loans in an exhibition hall to gallery rotations focused on a theme from our own collection. But being prolific is one of the things that also sets us apart, but also adds complexity, where we can use data to understand how it all fits together. We've been voted a top 3 museum worldwide by TripAdvisor in the past 3 years, which we're very proud of. It means our visitors are having a good time, which satisfaction is an incredibly high priority for us. And as a result of this, as well as other decision making, we've actually seen double-digit annual growth in admissions revenue, which for a museum, particularly one of arts and culture, is outstanding. We're very proud of this. And we're big. We're a big campus, about 1 million square feet of accessible space, making us the 2nd largest art museum in the U.S., which is, again, something that is great from displaying and storing works of art, but also challenging from managing our physical plant. With that, one may ask, well, why does an art museum need data? Things just go up on the wall, and people walk around, and that's about it, and it couldn't be further from the truth. And when joining the Art Institute about 4 years ago, one of the things I really had to wrap my head around, coming from a science background, an engineering background in the for-profit world, museums are incredibly complex. So if you start with collections at the center, that's our most important asset. That's what makes us unique. And without the collection, we'd be a very uniquely designed building on expensive real estate in Chicago. With the collection, we're one of the best museums in the world. And with the collection comes the people and the space to support them. Beyond that, we have a number of products. So we produce a visitor experience. We produce a broad education program ranging from elementary school all the way to arts professionals. We have a broad exhibition program that I mentioned before is incredibly prolific, and we contribute scholarly research to the field through conservation, through publishing, and through just understanding the story behind the works in our collection, how it contributes to art history. Beyond that, we also have a range of audiences. So students, patrons, we have visitors, we have art collectors, we have scholars, and all of this ties back to the collection. So when we say we have many different business models under one roof, we really do. And sometimes, looking at all the intersections here, we have conflicting objectives. Sometimes we say it's mission versus money, but ultimately our responsibility as leading this organization is how does all of this fit together in a financially and operationally sustainable way going forward. And that's where data comes in. So data helps us understand the different business models that exist within the museum. So rather than treat everything as one museum, we found great success in parsing apart the different business models into something that can be modeled, that can be understood, that has a specific performance metric, and then bring them back together to understand how it all can be brought into balance. And without applied data, we would not be able to do this. This has really been, I think, what sets us apart operationally from many of our peers. Now, we're a resource-constrained organization, right? So when we say we're about $100 million top line per year, and while that makes us a very large museum, that makes us very small in the grand scheme of things. We're nowhere near Fortune anything in terms of size. We also have no single metric for success. We have limited analytic experience in-house. And so myself, my colleague Matt, but our expertise as an institution comes from the art and qualitative interpretation. And like many businesses, we have fragmented systems. And for us, this can range all the way from new cloud-based systems to track attendance and visitor behavior, all the way to PDFs and sometimes paper sheets. So we have to bring this all together to really use data in the right way and to understand where to focus our efforts. So how do we use Alteryx? Now, given the resource constraints, Alteryx allows us to really scale up. So if we can't put additional bodies on the problem, if we can't put a disproportionate amount of money against the problem, the best thing we can do is just figure out how to go faster, better, with higher quality in a way that our lean team can work with. And Alteryx has been a product we've gotten really fond of over the last couple years for achieving this. And the way we've implemented this is we've established what we'll call a business intelligence core. And it's nothing too fancy in the grand scheme of things, but we use a SQL Server installation, have that port to Alteryx, which then ports to Tableau, which allows us to, in a pretty lean way, get our data from different sources in one place, process it efficiently in a repeatable way, either through blending, workflow automation, etc., and then visualize it in different ways to have custom views for different audiences. And this doesn't mean we visualize everything. Sometimes we use reporting services for day-to-day operational reports. We still use Excel. It works in many instances. But what we've tried to do is just generally get our data in one place, process it the same way every single time with as little effort as possible, and then get to the good enough answer using whatever communication platform is best for the audience. So what I was planning to do for the remainder of the presentation is walk through a couple of our greatest hits, some of the questions that really are important to our business and where data has come in handy. So most importantly is what's driving our attendance. And this was the first question where Matt and I met each other, and also where we really found something to work on that in essence is a simple question but has incredible importance. Our admissions revenue, our membership revenue, our shop revenue, all depends on feet in the door, as well as this balance of mission and accessibility versus revenue. So we have to understand how this works. And for the Art Institute, it's a little bit more complex than, say, a regional museum. So we have a global attendance footprint. We get visitors from all over the globe. We've just highlighted some where we get a large amount, but again, global attendance through international tourism, domestic tourism, we get visitors from all 50 states, as well as Illinois, and then locally, we have both the city and the suburbs. And when it comes down to it, we have to make a lot of decisions, not all of which will have the same impact on our attendance. So, do exhibitions have an effect? What about tourism patterns? What about our price? What about our other programming? Does the weather affect? You may have heard Chicago has bad weather from time to time. And all of these may or may not have an impact, but at the time when we started a lot of this work, we treated our attendance patterns as one monolithic thing versus breaking it apart. So we started just by understanding what are some general trends we can see in the data using simple visualization. So what we show here is 3 years of attendance data with the gray and beige bars representing different exhibitions. And there's not a really clear discernible pattern in here. So you see looks like some cyclicality, higher attendance during the summer months, but that also coincides with some of the exhibitions. You also see a lot of one-off peaks, particularly around the year point. And when looking at your attendance like this, it's hard to really understand or even detect when there is a meaningful change. So what we first did is separate out by geography. And it was very obvious that when taking a look at the tourism market, it was seasonal. Hopefully you guys can see on the screen, but there is just this clear sinusoid, and it cuts through some of the exhibitions, suggesting that tourism volume, while maybe having some dependence on exhibitions, looks to be just a cyclical pattern. Whereas if we look at member attendance, which is primarily local, it's very event-driven. So you see these tabletops that show up every time we have a major show, is to differing degrees. And you also see some patterns. Sometimes you see a lift near the end of an exhibition. Again, it's flat except for these activities that we can control. So that got us thinking. And so if we have some aspects of our attendance that are out of our control, which is tourism patterns and cyclicality, whereas we have some aspects of our attendance that are in our control, then we need to figure out what factors influence what. So this was our first adventure in multivariate regression modeling for attendance at the Art Institute. Something that Matt really took the reins on and just knocked out of the park. But using a database of historical attendance that we fortunately kept up before big data was a popular thing, we tested about 200 different factors across 6 different geographies to see which factors within our control and which factors outside of our control had a meaningful impact in attendance. Now, in an organization like ours, the term p-value and statistical significance causes a lot of glassy eyes, some people falling asleep. So using traditional statistics to communicate change is not going to go over well. So one of the things that, again, Matt did a phenomenal job of this is to leverage our strengths in visual interpretation to communicate a very, very meaningful set of information to understand our business. So what you see here is our first major effort to visualize data in Tableau, and this is the output of our attendance model. So on the top, you see that we have red, which is our actual attendance by week, the blue, which is the expected attendance by week that is based on input factors that are in that multivariate model. And then at the bottom, we implemented a control chart, which is very common in manufacturing, not super common in art museums. And what we did here is just graphically show when there is a meaningful change in attendance. So if it's a solid circle, no worries, nothing to see here. We can call off the weekly meeting. If there is not a solid circle above the line, something good happened. If it's below the line, something bad happened, and it signals, hey guys, look here. And then using a lot of the logical reasoning that our staff is quite great at, trying to figure out what the hypothesis is, what could have driven a change. And what you see here is the effect following the announcement of our first big win in TripAdvisor. So in 2014, we were named the #1 museum in the world, which when we received the award, we were excited, we were proud. We didn't really know what it was going to do. So thankfully, we had the model created a couple months before that. And what we saw is there was a break in the model, and not in all segments, just in local ticketing. And we're watching this. Tourism was holding flat. Membership was holding flat. But this local ticketed group, which is really the most important thing for us for building future audience, spiked. Like, well, there may be something to that message. So by simply pivoting our marketing for the tourism season to the #1 rating. We had a World Champions of Art campaign complete with foam fingers, which was a bit of a gamble, but it was shifting resources, not adding. We saw a sustained lift within our tourist market once tourism season came along, shown in the second oval to the right. The area under the curve through the time shown on this page, which is about a year, we saw a net increase of about $2.3 million, which for us is a big deal. And by using data and visualizing it the right way and using it to drive simple day-to-day decisions, we're able to really, really help our bottom line and without disrupting mission at all, provide more financial sustainability. And this was the one where data at the museum really took off, where we wanted to start, like, this method works, let's try some new things. So since then, we have extended this model to other aspects of our business that are driven by attendance. So museum shop sales, financial forecasting, membership joins and renewals, and then frontline staffing decisions. So when do we need more folks out there selling tickets and checking coats, et cetera. One thing that's interesting, since we've put this model into place, we finished our first fiscal year with a budget built on the model, and we were within 0.5% of the total for the year, which we feel very good about this approach. And for next year, we also feel great that we've been able to build models that reflect other revenue streams. Just using the same visual, here's the shop revenue model. We've gone through a ton of work in reducing complexity, lowering SKU count, lowering inventory, freeing up floor space in the shop floor. And we've seen, using this model as a baseline, that we've been able to achieve this without impacting expected top-line revenue, which again helps us. And this concept of using applied data, letting the computer do the heavy lifting, and just relying on good information to make decisions, has really, really improved our ability to generate operating revenue and operate in a rational, lean way. And it's very exciting stuff. So moving forward, counting audiences and projecting money is one thing, but who are the audiences that we're serving? What are the motivations? What are the barriers? What are differences within our programs? It's not just the count. For those programs that are new or really aimed at engaging new audiences in the visual arts, we need to know what works and what doesn't. And a challenge that we've seen for a while is how to use traditional market segmentation studies to segment the audiences in a business such as ours. So we have a very diverse set of products, programs, and eventually, for us, the cost-benefit just doesn't make sense for doing things the traditional way. So we could do a Chicagoland market segmentation, send out a survey, get some results, run a cluster analysis, and say, here's what groups make sense to us. And that works, right? We've done some great work in that area, but the resources outweigh the utility. Once you start to get to segmentation of museum goers, the utility really starts to shrink below the resource requirements. And then to get to that approach for a program level segmentation where we really see how do different audiences react, a business our size just can't realistically do it. And over the past year, we've really leveraged the power of the Alteryx platform to apply machine learning to different programs as well as geolocation to understand what programs and what offerings engage what segments of the Chicagoland market, which has been really eye-opening, really powerful, and we think a super unique application for the tool. So we started with membership as our initial use case. And the reason for this being we have a very robust data set. It's a team internally that's been really open to using data in new ways. And from a lifetime value perspective, it's very important for us to continue to engage our audiences that show a warmth and a disposition to engage with us. They're very, very, very critical. So the way we did this is at a very high level. We first identified, going down to the census block level, where we had high membership penetration. So using the demographic and psychographic segmentation of those census blocks, as well as the member data itself, we're able to create an algorithm that indicated or scored different regions of where does the population look like they reflect individuals that have membership-like traits. And what we're able to do is put that back out to the Chicagoland community, then say, here are the census blocks where if we were to double down on membership recruitment or membership engagement, where we should go. And it was fascinating, and a big takeaway for us was, one, the workload associated took our timing from months for a study down to hours, but also showed us that zip code level targeting for our business isn't the most effective way possible, particularly in a city like Chicago. So here we show a single zip code, which include neighborhoods of Oak Park and Berwyn, and you see that there's different likelihood of a census block containing high member penetration. And we can expand on this algorithm to other parts of our business. So e-commerce, lectures and performances, school tours, community outreach. I think one of the things that really gets us fired up and where we are in the process of going, and again, a dream next step, is to turn this on programs geared solely towards accessibility and mission. We can now start to put a testable baseline and harder metrics on those programs that really do tie to our future relevance, as well as efforts that every museum is engaging in, but very few have the ability to test. And we think we have a tool that allows us to do it. So that's just super exciting, and it's great to be able to take the data beyond just driving more revenue, forecasting more effectively, learning how to run faster and better, to actually test experimental programs that have these different KPIs. It's just very, very, very cool, and something we're incredibly proud and excited about. So speaking of mission, there's always the question, well, if we go back to our business, the collection is at the center of it. So what can we do in applying data and techniques in new ways to make our collections more accessible? So this was an interesting approach for us. And one of the strategies that Matt and I have employed is to take a good enough approach and use the tool sets and the data we have to just prototype, see what works. And we have a home-built collection database within our organization. We call it City. It's built on the 4D platform. And as you saw in the earlier slide, we have what we'll call the Business Intelligence Core, which is a combination of SQL Server, Alteryx, and Tableau. So the only break here is the database structure. So what we did is built a link from the 4D database to convert it into SQL, and then used our visualization package to just garner some very basic information about our collection. What was unique about this, it was a new data set that had never been examined in this way, which pales in comparison from a sophistication standpoint relative to the forecasting models or machine learning segmentation, has really, really enabled us to learn about our most important asset in new ways, as well as build excitement around the idea of using applied data to improve all aspects of our organization. So one very basic application was showing the count of objects in the galleries by status. Right? So how many of the objects in the gallery are online? And this was a big effort. We've put a lot of resources to getting more and more of our collection accessible digitally for folks not in our museum. What's been great about this, using a visual reporting tool where a user, rather than to manually search or do gallery counts, can just pull up a scorecard, click on a section that is not yet published, and then see, well, where are these? And that allows us to focus imaging activity, workload from our digital teams, and ultimately just keep consistent in an ongoing day-to-day way to get that to get the share of objects in the galleries online with an image to, we're trying to keep it above 99%. Now, there's always things moving in and out, but to go from, we'll say, slightly over 50% to 99% using data visualization and a team that's been willing to embrace this is just really, really great stuff. It's powerful, it moves our business forward, and there's nothing about this particular visualization that is complicated or unique. It's just showing data we have in a good enough way to make decisions. And beyond operational efficiency, one of my favorite applications is just learning about how our collection has grown over time. And one of the ideas, and several museums are moving into data visualization for this type of activity, just to understand what's happened. So here we show our modern and contemporary collection. Earlier, given the focus we have on modern contemporary, it's just one way to bring us all on the same level of understanding of what's happened in the department over time. And you see this pattern where we'll get a type of media And over time, that type of media will expand. So starting with painting and sculpture. Mixed media kind of held steady, but then you get to oversized photography. You get to audio and visual. And this is a moment now where we have to think about how do we invest to collect types of art that are just burgeoning now. So time-based media, computer-based art. What's the right way to collect it, to store it, to get provenance? But just looking at the data, it immediately galvanizes the team here to say, wow, if that keeps growing, we can't just do it in an ad hoc method. And it helps us plan for the future using an approach that, while not super sophisticated from a technical standpoint, from a practicality standpoint, has just been very, very, very valuable, and allowing individuals who are some of the best in the world at what they do to take the insights from quantitative analysis in a way that's useful to them through visual communication and leveraging the strength in visual interpretation. So with that, what have we learned? So Matt and I have been doing this for the better part of 3 to 4 years now, and we've had a number of successes. We've had a number of failures. We've had experiments take off. We've had experiments just die out. But if I think back and we really reflect on what has worked well in our institution, these are pretty broad principles that we feel are relevant to organizations of all types, especially those starting out down this path. And well, first you have to play to your strengths as an organization. Right? So the Art Institute will always be known for visual art, and the talent will always reside in those close to the art. While I believe Matt is one of the best there is, and I'm catching up really fast, our strengths will be in visual interpretation. So if we're going to make moves into applying data for business decisions, visualization is a great way for us to do it that's compatible with our org. And for those of you in different organizations, statistical variance and p-values may be the best way to do it. Tabular reports may be the best way to do it. And I encourage you all to think about what's the best way for decision makers to interpret information, because that gives you the best chance of success and for things to catch on in the early going. For us, given our resource constraints, we've really been forced to only pick questions that matter. So you've seen 3 of the main ones, and we've tackled others, but our team is quite small. So it's myself and Matt. Matt has, we'll say, about 1 FTE between the 2 of us at any given point in time. So we can't afford to make mistakes and pick questions that aren't relevant to our business. Now, on one hand, it means we can't be as exploratory as we'd like to be, and we can't chase every single insight. But it does give us sort of urgency that allows us to hit those questions that matter most and build up our, I think, our success rate. We believe in lean process. Again, given our resource constraints, we have done ourselves a disservice if we build something that can't scale up, that we can't run with minimal support. Complexity is not our friend, because if we do something that is overly complex, we may bog ourselves down and be locked into that while missing other big questions that matter. The personal element is just as important when bringing applied data and analytics to an organization. You remember, the data itself is an asset, but the asset needs to be used. And you get the value from that asset if people feel good about making decisions and the organization can get behind it. And there will be times, for anyone that uses data, where you're going to come across an inconvenient truth. And understanding the personal elements and how to navigate that and how to really drive cultural change is super duper critical. I'd argue the most important of any of these learnings. And then practical is better than perfect. Again, going back to the idea that the decision is what matters most. It's better to make a decision with good enough information than to hold the release for something perfect, because frankly, we've never seen it get there, and we've been at it a while. And this idea of practicality has really allowed us to accelerate in areas where we haven't before. So with that, well, thank you. I appreciate the time. I know everybody's got a busy schedule. And yeah, this has just been wonderful. So with that, I will pass the presentation over to Ram and talk a little bit more about the Alteryx platform.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy, for that wonderful presentation. You did a great job showcasing the insights and bottom line value that the right analytics stack can provide for an organization. Next, I'd like to provide a brief overview of Alteryx and our partnership with Tableau so that you have a bit more context surrounding the self-service analytics platforms utilized at the Art Institute of Chicago. Alteryx is a leading platform for self-service data analytics. It enables analysts to use a repeatable drag-and-drop workflow to easily prep, blend, and analyze all of their data, be it on-premises or in the cloud. With Alteryx, analysts can deploy and share their analytics at scale for deeper insights in minutes, not weeks. All of this empowers analysts and the line of business users to perform their own analytics, quickly process large volumes of data, and then output results to all popular formats, including Tableau. In other words, Alteryx helps analysts reclaim the thrill of solving. What's more, with Alteryx, you can use the same workflow to enrich your data if need be. We have relationships with leading providers of third-party data so that you can augment your data with additional insight to create the perfect data set for your analysis. Regarding our advanced analytics, the predictive capabilities are based on the language R. These tools require no coding expertise, but they are coding friendly, so if you do have R programmers, they can customize these tools or even create their own tools to be reused in Alteryx. Our spatial analytics tools utilize data from TomTom to build trade areas based on drive times or other variables to do sophisticated location or geospatial analysis. Finally, Alteryx makes it easy to share the business insights you produce. With a legacy analytic approach, analytic apps and reports often have to be created in another environment or custom coded. With Alteryx, this step is simply added to the end of the workflow to enable reporting, output data for visualization in Tableau and other popular viz platforms, or create analytic apps that allow business decision makers throughout your organization to customize and run their own analytics without having you create custom reports. As for our partners at Tableau, they realize that within the vast amount of data available to us, there are huge opportunities for advancement. But to turn opportunities into reality, people need the power of data at their fingertips. Tableau does just this. Go from generating powerful data-driven insights in Alteryx to sharing them directly with others in your organization for consumption in a beautiful and useful manner with Tableau. And at this time, I'd like to again extend our gratitude to Andy for providing a glimpse into the Art Institute's analytics story. As a next step, please visit us at alteryx.com/TableauKit to download your 14-day free trial of the Alteryx Designer. With the kit, you'll get pre-built Alteryx workflows that output to Tableau, making it that much easier to get hands-on experience with the platform. A follow-up email containing this URL will also be sent to all webinar attendees as a follow-up. And with that, I'd like to hand it back to Bill for Q&A. Thank you.
Well, Andy, Matthew, Raman, thanks for that excellent presentation. We'll get started with today's Q&A session, and I want to thank the audience for their participation. We've had a lot of questions that have come in, and we'll do our best to get through all of them in the time remaining. So during this Q&A session, I'll leave up this screen with contact information for our speakers if you'd like to contact them following today's webinar. So let's get started. Andy, I'm going to address most of these directly to you. The audience is obviously thrilled to have a chance to talk to someone who actually has the experience of feet on the ground. So let me start with this technical question from the audience, and that is, give us some sense of how many different data sources you're connecting to, and have you run into any size limitations with Alteryx, and how much data are you running through that system?
Sure, and I'll defer this question to Matt, as he lives in the jungle of databases here at the Art Institute.
Thanks, Andy. Hey, everybody. We use tons of data sources. I mean, Andy covered, I don't know how many already in the presentation, but we have membership system, donor management, our ticketing system, and access control related to that, shop transactions, artwork, tons of facilities data. Andy talked about how large our facility is, anything from energy use to work requests, security, so people checking in and out. You know, security is very important here, obviously, in the Art Museum. Wi-Fi tracking, people scanners, Those are, most of those are real rigorous databases, but all the way down to, we have some family passes that when people come in, they're able to get in for free with their family, targeted at some, lower income areas. Those are recorded in Excel. And, with Alteryx, it's really easy to get at all of them and combine them together, which is another great feature of using the Alteryx platform. Be it, we use a Microsoft SQL stack here for the most part. So be it reaching out to a database that lives in the cloud in Azure to, local databases in our host farm, and bringing in that family pass information from, just a spreadsheet that somebody keeps in an ad hoc fashion, and blending it all together and spitting it out in a single, format that we can visualize at a later point, all very easily. And we don't haven't run into any issues with size limitations. I mean, Andy talked about how we have, 1.5 to 1.7 million visitors, so those are each discrete tickets, right, that people are getting, or discrete memberships that people are getting. They bring those, they scan them in individual access points in the museum, so we have that scan data as well. So if somebody comes into entry, they scan it there. Maybe they go to the member lounge, we scan them there. So, millions of scan records merged with millions of tickets, merged with the contact information, all of it, put together, and it runs very fast and no size limitations at all.
Well, Matt, thanks for that clarification. If I understood your presentation correctly, something happened 4 or 5 years ago, and the audience would be interested to know, what is it that caused Art Institute of Chicago to have this data transformation? Was it the fact that that Andy and Matt, that you arrived on the scene and brought those skills with you, or was there a management-directed decision? And obviously there were some cultural change impacts in that too. Can you speak to that issue of how this all got started?
Yeah, I'll kick it off, and Matt, feel free to jump in, as you've been at the museum longer than I have. I think so. So I was formerly a consultant, and got to know the museum and effectively joined them about 4 years ago now. And I think one of the things that was very unique about the Art Institute, even relative to other businesses I saw, there was a natural curiosity. Right? So there was a desire to know how the organization worked, how to grow attendance, how to improve the strength of the collection, and also an organization that had invested in data systems, that had good records to work with. Not perfect, but good. And I think that the culture was primed for the investigation of these questions. And I think, if I think about the moment, or like it's a spark, it was when I met Matt. I think his mind is just perfect for this type of work. I ask a lot of questions and talk a lot, and Matt understands how to actually get work done. And it was just the right time, the right place. And also, I think using some of those approaches we talked about earlier, we're able to get some really good wins and really important progress quickly without a lot of investment or time spent for perfection. It's just the right people, the right place, the right environment, and we just were able to bring the right tools to the problem. Very unique situation.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is that I think the tool sets matter too, because we kind of found Alteryx and Tableau around that time when data and analytics was emerging within the organization, and we were doing things in a lot more manual fashion. I was writing, handcrafting, SQL statements and merging things together, maybe in Excel to get them to put together and producing the reports by hand, kind of stuff. And but you can't really get to critical mass like we have now without the right toolkit. And so having Alteryx and Tableau working together really helped us achieve that.
Well, thanks for that insight. Now, our audience, by the way, I particularly appreciated your emphasis on being pragmatic and not striving always for perfection. But our audience asks a question: did you start by formulating a data analytic vision, or was this really ad hoc? And if there was a vision, how far are you into it?
Yeah, I think it started. The vision was around the business need. So one of the tenets of our strategic plan, which has been getting a little long in the tooth, but 4 years ago was, how do we grow local audiences? So we needed to answer that question to achieve the museum's mission and financial objectives. And I think at the time, while there wasn't a vision to say build a data and analytics function, there was a very pressing need to get this right. And so at the very beginning, the attendance work, I would say that was more ad hoc. It was answering a business problem, just applying new tools to do it, and then having the success. Since then, we've made more proactive decisions to restructure a bit, to bring analytics central and give it more access to the business. We have put more focus on communication of insights, as well as still maintaining some of that ad hoc approach that allows us to find new, clever applications if the business need persists. So almost a way to say business vision first, ad hoc use of application, leading to a data and analytics vision, which then leads to ad hoc insight, which hopefully the next go-around for our strategic planning will be business priorities with a new set of knowledge, if that makes sense.
Very much so. Very much so, and thank you. You know, obviously at some point in this journey that you've been on, you formed this relationship with Alteryx. Can you tell us how long ago that was and how long it took you to get comfortable and productive with Alteryx as a tool?
So I'll defer to Matt to get specifics, but quickly I'll say Alteryx was very easy. Learning curve wasn't too bad for me, and I'm not a pro, but I'll defer to the expert.
Yeah, I mean, I think we started working with Alteryx 3 years ago, maybe, right around that time. And yeah, no, I mean, I knew from the moment I first was introduced to it and saw it, I immediately saw the applications, and we had to have it. I remember how excited I was.
Yeah, you called me. I was on a flight to LaGuardia. I was about to board. And like, Andy, you got to see this product. Yeah, and it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, not to go. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I think I even asked you, Andy. They're a private company at the time. This was before they went public. If you knew anybody who could get me private shares of stock in Alteryx, so I was gung ho immediately. And you know, I have a technical background, so I worked in IS here for 10 years. So I'm really familiar with software tools. So you know, it felt a little like integration services, Microsoft integration services, but just blows it out of the water in terms of usability and overall ability and how it works. So I did not find it challenging to pick up. We also have some non-technical users here that use it as well, as we've been expanding its role, and man, they pick it up fast. It's really surprising.
Awesome. I'd also like to add that we have a wonderful community online. So oftentimes when I talk to customers and I ask about the learning curve, one of the things that comes up is community. In fact, I was just talking to a customer, I think, earlier this week, and I asked what was the learning curve, and they said that they bought a number of hours for training with Alteryx, and they just haven't had time to consume them because they find all the answers that they're looking for in the community, and it's quick and it's easy. So we do have a wonderful ecosystem here.
Excellent. Oh, hey, thank you all for those great answers. And you mentioned other users, and our audience is wondering, since this presentation is about self-service, who your other customers are. I understand that you're using it yourself for blending, and that obviously takes a load off of IT, and that a lot of this is focused on visualization. Can you talk about who your internal customers are and what sort of questions they're answering, and do you think that their use of the platform is efficient?
So I'll kick this off and then pass it to Matt. So overall, when we talk about self-service, the way we're structured is to centralize the data processing So the wiring of an Alteryx model or the creation of a SQL statement, and then distribute the output as efficiently as possible to end users to make decisions. And with the distribution, at some points we're using Tableau visualization. We also rely very heavily on reporting services. It's boring, it's old school, but it works really, really, really well. And we also use Excel. So I think where we push the self-service aspect is for the end user to get the information they need to make a decision, but we also have taken steps to minimize the amount of data processing and data blending that the end user has to do at this point in time. And that's due to the distribution of, say, analyst and quantitative talent around the museum. I mean, obviously we'd love everyone to be able to do analyses on the fly every single time. We found it most effective, at least as we go through this first inflection point, to focus on the end user getting the information they need as quickly and efficiently as possible. And Matt, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is, typically it's the business owners work with us to build out the data sets that they need to help us understand quirks in the data or ask the right questions, and then quickly prototype, design, and see whatever a final output would be. And then that output usually is robust enough that they can ask multiple questions off it. It updates automatically, and so they can use it in an ongoing fashion to help them answer those type of questions moving forward. So it kind of gets handed then out to the business owner to use and run.
Well, thanks for that insight. In your presentation, we saw a lot of examples of applying predictive modeling, both forecasting and classification models for customer behavior there. Did you do that modeling in Alteryx or in Tableau or some third platform?
And Matt, that one's all yours.
Yeah, I can take it. So as I said, this has kind of been a journey. So when we were originally building these, I hadn't necessarily found Tableau. So I used a product called Minitab to build the attendance model. So all the different linear regression-based models or binary logistic-based regression models that we built over time, such as we have a membership renewal model. Takes membership data in and analyzes the likelihood that someone's going to renew, much like Credit One did back in the day with their credit scoring, totally stolen from there. And then as we've got Alteryx in, now instead of building those by hand and building those data sets by hand, it has all those tools integrated through the R package. So it's much easier to do that kind of modeling, and much easier to update it and keep it fresh and keep it live and delivering the data instead of recoding everything by hand. Because previously when you built the model in Minitab, it meant you had to operationalize it manually through building out how to calculate the end result via SQL statements, things like that. So it took that was a lot more work doing it that way than it is to just run it through an Alteryx process that saves the output of the model and lets you rerun any new data through that model easily.
Well, thank you for that insight, and let me drill down on that a little bit because we have a question from the audience who's asking specifically about how you applied all this to help with shop sales. And one of the things that struck me about the slide you had on shop sales was it appeared to be a time series forecast of revenue. Can you talk specifically about the sort of analytics you applied to shop sales and how you produced that nice-looking time series forecast?
Yeah, that's actually also a linear regression model. So it's not one of the time series forecast models that exist within Alteryx. It uses attendance as one of its inputs. So the different types of attendance, be it members or tourists or locals, they might have different baseline. Plus the other things like seasonality, like you'd expect. The Christmas season, the conversion rate or the average per ticket goes up at Christmas time, or it falls off, after the new year. So that kind of seasonality also plays in. So that's all also a linear regression of the revenue. We also used it to help analyze our stock, what we stocked, how many SKUs we stocked, what was selling, what was overstocked, understocked. So we definitely purged a lot of SKUs that were laggards. It allowed us to more clearly see what's a winner, what's a loser, what we have too much of, what we have too little of, quickly and visually. And so our store really underwent quite a transformation recently in look and feel, with a lot less SKUs, only the SKUs that matter or were the most valuable to us. So that's an ongoing process.
Terrific. And kind of parallel to that, we know that you can do blending both in Alteryx, but you can also do blending in Tableau. How do you decide where the blending gets done, on which platform?
To be honest, I virtually never blend data in Tableau. I will either blend it at the SQL level, so hand-scripted SQL statements that I write, or at the Alteryx level. I just find it faster and easier to manage and use. Oftentimes to get a perfect Tableau data set, you need to massage it. It's just easier and more repeatable for me to just build that out in Alteryx. And then I can just press play, to refresh it instead of having to do any other kind of refreshing. So almost always in Alteryx or SQL.
Understand completely. Let's see. For both of you, any tips on how our audience members might help their companies become more data-driven, or what lessons have you learned that our audience could apply to companies that are perhaps not very far down that journey yet?
Let's see. So I think first and foremost, you have to identify a business problem that matters to a key stakeholder or stakeholders. So for an organization to really get behind data, there needs to be an understanding that there's utility, and the best chance somebody has to strike is to take a shot at the question that matters most. And it may not be easy to get an answer, but I think that stacks the deck in your favor early to get buy-in. And then that idea of practical versus perfect. Data exists everywhere. Right? Does not have to be giant real-time data sets. Even we've had success using pivot tables in some regards. It's using the good enough information to show progress against a question that matters. And then from our experience and what I've heard and seen in other organizations, kind of get this organic growth to get the buy-in, and then that's where more structure and resources and all that fun stuff happens. But if you're just starting out, I think it's get the right question, be practical about the solution using the information you have.
Well, thanks, and I particularly like the practical versus perfect guidance. Just one quick question at the end, though this lends itself to a longer answer. If you can give us a short answer to where are you going next with analytics? What's on your target for expanding this?
Oh boy! All right, I'll give a couple ideas. So one, I think really taking this platform that we've developed and applying it to mission-driven programming, and not just being dependent on the bottom line, but evaluating programs in new quantitative ways that the field may not have seen before. I think that's a very, very intriguing application that ties directly to where we want to go as a museum. I'm also incredibly intrigued with Internet of Things, and particularly how the Internet of Things can be used to make our physical plant more efficient. So in terms of energy usage, preventative maintenance, we have really, really stringent environmental controls within our building. So despite its age, it still has to maintain humidity, temperature, light levels very precisely given the assets we're holding. And the use of sensor data in new ways just seems tailor-made for that end application. So that's something we talk about quite a bit behind the scenes. It's new to us, but we've done new things before and been successful. So hopefully this ends up in the win column a couple of years from now.
Andy, Matt, Raman, hey, thank you for some great answers to some very good questions. For those of you that asked questions that weren't answered today, we'll be sending all those unanswered questions to Andy, Matt, Raman, and the Alteryx team so they can follow up with you after today's webinar. I have just a few quick announcements. If you'd please mark your calendars for August 15th, that's our next DSC webinar, which will be Parallelize R code using Apache Spark, and that'll be sponsored by Databricks. Also, remember that today's taping will be available for on-demand viewing later today, and you can find that on the home page of Data Science Central in the Webinar tab located at the top of the page. Well, this brings today's webinar to a close, and I'd like to thank our audience for their attendance and thoughtful questions. A special thanks again to Alteryx for their sponsorship, and for our speakers today, Andy Simnick and Matthew Norris with the Art Institute of Chicago, and Raman Kaler with Alteryx for their insight into today's topic. My name is Bill Voorhees. I'm very pleased to have been your host for today's event. I look forward to seeing you all again on August 15th. Have a great day.